If you already work in cannabis, then you know times are tough. So many talented professionals have lost their full-time gigs in the cannabis industry and are wondering what's next. If that's you or someone you care about, you'll be thrilled to hear that the wondering is over. Find out the latest cannabis industry job trends and which states are leading the pack in the 2023 Cannabis Jobs Report by Vankst. Vankst is the leading cannabis hiring platform, and they're providing this report to the cannabis industry for free. So head over to Vankst.com to access your copy of the newly released 21-page 2023 Cannabis Jobs Report. And while you're there, sign up to find the perfect job or the perfect hire today. That's Vankst.com. How good are you at spotting a fake ID? Probably not as good as you think. Bogus IDs are more sophisticated than ever, and experienced bouncers are having trouble telling fake IDs from real ones. Selling cannabis to minors can result in huge fines and even cost dispensaries their license. That's why Veriscan by IDscan.net protects their dispensary partners by performing more than 75 algorithmic checks on each ID's barcodes. So if your dispensary is worried about inadvertently selling cannabis to a minor, you should look into Veriscan by IDscan.net. They're offering listeners of this podcast free white glove setup. Just go to idscan.net to join over 1,000 North American dispensaries and 9 out of 10 of the largest MSOs who are confidently bringing plant medicine to legal age consumers.
What's going on, everybody? It's another episode of Cannabis Legalization News. We have big federal news this week. The PREPARE Act has been filed bicamerally. Trump suggested that weed causes something. There's been a firearms ban for cannabis users that's been ruled unconstitutional again by another court. There's a progressive push for Biden doing his evaluation at the administrative level quicker. And Cory Bookin said that cannabis is a dangerous drug. So let's get into cannabis legalization news for this week. What's happening, everybody? And thank you, Josh, for joining us. Really appreciate it stepping in. Miggy's had a death in the family, so lots of heartfelt thanks and thoughts out to Miggy. If you guys have them in your thoughts, please drop a comment and give us a like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was something else, but we do have some big federal news that came out this week. Let me try to get that sucker up. There it goes. The House Democrat and Republicans have filed a bipartisan bill to prepare the government for legalizing cannabis. That was broke out of the marijuana moment. They filed it on Thursday. That was Representative Dave Joyce out of Ohio and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries out of New York. They've introduced the Prepare Regulators Effectively for Post-Prohibition Adult Use Regulated Environment Act, aka the Prepare Act, and that was filed on Thursday. What do you think about another bill using an acronym to spell out what it's doing?
That's all we need is one more acronym. Yeah. Government loves that, though.
The Prepare Act. It is kind of hilarious that that's how they call it, though, but not a bad bill. They're going to, it would direct the administration to look at how they regulate alcohol and create recommendations for how they can do the same. So it tells the Attorney General to create a commission charged with making recommendations for a regulatory system for cannabis that models what's currently in place for alcohol. It almost seems like not necessarily legalization light, but legalization how, like they're creating a bill for how do we legalize this at the administrative level, because the administration and the regulatory agencies are what really do all the real work.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if they actually go through with it, though. Like, it almost seems easier for them to just kick it down the road to the states and allow the states to do it. If they just decriminalize it, it would be way easier, and then they don't have to figure any of that out, and they still look like the good guys.
Well, I think they want to eventually figure it out, but they also don't want to be blamed for it. So they want somebody else to tell them how to do their jobs, and then they'll vote for it.
Good point.
Right. Well, it kind of just strikes me as that, they go on and they mention about it. And so with nearly every state adopting its own set of cannabis reforms and end to federal cannabis prohibition, it's inevitable. They're online saying and on the record saying, but they want lawmakers to have a path forward for the regulations. And so they kind of want the administration to tell them what they need to do.
Yeah, that's why
points.
I've always said that we need like an SRO, a self-governing organization. The banking industry has that because the feds don't know what to do, right? And so they're going to look to somebody, and there will be that self-regulatory organization or SRO that fills that void, because this inevitably won't go well if we leave it up to the feds to do it. And if we leave it up to lobbyists, then all we'll get is the interest of big MSOs. So eventually,
that's all we already have. I mean, like, it is all in the interest of the big MSOs. And so that, like, except that is a good story that we have later in the broadcast out of New Jersey. Somebody got dropped from their license. That was pretty cool.
We don't have MSOs in Washington, so it's feasible to write a bill where you can kick them out, whatever. But it's not.
But why don't you have MSOs in Washington? So I don't think it's really feasible to be able to write that bill. I think one state might be able to get away with it, but when you have interstate commerce, I think it becomes very difficult.
Oh yeah. Then it's all over. Yeah.
But then, does Washington State require inside investment? Is that how they do it, or like only Washington State residents may own a cannabis license in the state?
Yeah, the MSOs want more than 10%, and that's the cap. So that's how to keep them out.
Keeping them out, 10% cap. And so, have they filed lawsuits that said this violates the Dormant Commerce Clause, trying to get their licenses that way?
No, because none of them want to get in because it's not vertically integrated. And since retailers are separated from the producer and the processor, nobody really wants in. This is an incredibly flooded state. So when they're leaving New Jersey, leaving California, the last place you want to go is in competitive marketplace like Washington that has 1,700 SKUs and a store. There's more stores, more rec shops than Starbucks in areas. So no one's banging down the door to get in here.
Yeah, and that's interesting because that sounds like how they're setting it up in New York. You can't be vertically integrated, and so those big MSOs are all vertically integrated entities. Maybe that would be keeping them out that way, simply because they don't want to get in. And it's like, what do you mean? We have to divest ourselves of all of our cultivation? We have to divest ourselves of all of our retail? No way.
No. Yeah, but it's also not good though, because there's all these people running around thinking that they're free of what's going to happen when that dormant commerce clause or legalization or cross-border transportation, whatever it is that allows for the massive amount of competition that's going to come in, will destroy a lot of egos and businesses along the way, because they just don't even know. They think they have like the fire and all. You go to these competitions and really it's just a lot of trash. Over 95% of it is trash. And that realization of that fact won't come to fruition until there's cross-border competitions and competitive marketplaces. Right now, you have this false realization that you can just kind of compete and keep going, but there will be people don't even grow Blue Dream anymore because it's not a high enough yield and it grows too long. So they're just serving this crap that these strains and cultivars that they think are easy to sell and are going to generate revenue. They are not really looking for the public. So got to change the
well, what do you think? But then, they don't grow Blue Dream anymore. So are they genetically modifying cannabis? Is that a thing? All this stuff, is that becoming genetically modified? Because our next story features genetically modified cannabis. I thought it was just all crosses and strains that have been, hybridized, and they've mostly been created in California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Like, is crossing strains making it genetically modified? And probably not. But no. There are plenty of labs that are adding their own, twist to that. So it's inevitable.
Well, this is also out of the marijuana moment that came out on April 14th. Trump suggests, and he didn't really suggest it, he stated that genetically engineered marijuana may be causing mass shootings. And I'm like, wait, I don't know of any cannabis that's genetically modified in there. But he's speaking at an NRA rally earlier this week, and he listed a number of controversial and unproven factors that he said he would direct the Food and Drug Administration to investigate as possibly causing the ongoing scourge of mass shootings in the country. This is at an NRA event trying to stop the mass shooters. They actually have it loaded up right here. I don't know if we'll get a copyright ding from the NRA, but the Marijuana Moment loaded it up. So if we click it, it'll just start on it. And you can't really hear it, but in his diatribe that he's going on right now, he, of course, blamed it on a mental health problem. But did they actually give the quote? Let's see if they gave the actual quote, because you guys can't hear it as it's being played through something else. Oh, there it is. Here's the actual quote. We have to look at whether common psychiatric drugs, and I don't sound like Trump at all, as well as genetically engineered cannabis and other narcotics are causing psychotic breaks that lead to gun violence. Ridiculous.
Is he talking about like D8 when he says synthetic cannabis?
Well, he's calling it genetically engineered cannabis, and it looked like he was reading directly from a teleprompter. To be honest, I mean, he's at a scripted event for the NRA, and if that's part of the script they're putting in there is cannabis is now genetically modified and causing gun crimes, which is just shocking and lying and just terrible that people would blame that. But there it is. You know,
how old is that script writer? That person who wrote that script has to be like 110 years old.
Has to be 110 years old. I mean, like nobody believes that anymore.
No, and I can't believe he actually read that. Like, know your audience, bro. Like nobody in the United States like believes that except the one person who wrote that and the 10 backers that they have. That's ludicrous. Not to say that he's that any bureaucrat has great things to say, but when you get up to the mic and you start spewing complete bullshit, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it really was just complete BS, but he's reading it into a teleprompter, and the people know that it's going to get the response from the audience that they want.
Right.
Which means that audience is willing to blame the cannabis plant for something instead of blaming the thing that they're there to support, guns. It's not all crazy news. Some news, especially for cannabis users who happen to believe in the Second Amendment and own guns, that was some good news this week. This has been a split now it's a split, because like before it was just you couldn't own firearms and be a cannabis user. You had to check a box when you were legally buying a firearm, and that has recently changed. So what has happened was that now this was an Oklahoma federal case first, and a couple weeks thereafter, and this is from the Ganjapreneur on April 11th, another federal court rules unconstitutional the ban of medical cannabis users or all cannabis users for owning a firearm. And this was a federal judge in the U.S. District of Court for the Western District of Texas, and they found the federal ban on cannabis consumers possessing firearms to be unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah, charges got dropped too, which is great. So El Paso resident Paola Connolly, and they were charged with possessing and transmitting a firearm in 2021 while being an admitted cannabis user.
Yeah. My massage therapist, her husband quit using cannabis because he felt it was unsafe around his guns, and yet his gun cabinet is right next to his extensive liquor cabinet. Right. And it's like makes absolutely no sense.
Well, the legality is the only X factor. The legality is the only X factor. I mean, the substantive aspect of it, like factually, the impairment, the one that's worse for your health, that's not real. It's just what the law says. And so the law says, well, if I'm caught with all this weed and guns, I can lose my guns, and that's crime, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was drinking the Kool-Aid too, because he's like, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. I better get rid of all my weed because it's going to be impairing or whatever, you know? Meanwhile, the guy gets absolutely hammered on the weekends, and alcohol is way worse than cannabis. Alcohol is going to make you make bad decisions. And I don't think you could ever blame smoking or consuming cannabis and being stupid with the firearm. It's just ludicrous.
Right. And the court, Judge Kathleen Cardone, She disputed the Justice Department's arguments that firearm ban led to the historical precedence of denying guns to intoxicated and unvirtuous citizens.
Hmm.
The historical tradition of disarming unlawful individuals appears to be mainly involved in disarming those convicted of serious crimes after they've been afforded criminal process. So she did not buy the whole argument of it was an intoxicant or an unvirtuous citizen, as opposed to you're not allowed to disarm citizens unless they've been convicted of serious crimes after their due process rights.
Hmm. Yeah. Silly.
It's something, but it's good news in that respect. And I think this is going to continue. It's now in 2 federal courts. I think it's going to continue to be in other federal courts. These cases will be cited. This is similar to the Dormant Commerce Clause theory of cases that has sprung out over in the industry for the past few years. And now whenever a state, Washington State perhaps, has some liability for it because they tend to self-deal a lot of their licenses and their ownership. But whatever,
Yeah, Washington State just passed a law where you can't have high magazine counts or certain what they call assault weapons. So yeah, maybe they'll figure it out eventually and overturn. Because I think if you have an MMJ card, that's the only thing that allows you to grow at home. Otherwise, it's a felony. And then, so if you have an MMJ card, you still can't have a gun in Washington. So they still have to figure that out.
Yeah, and I could see that getting challenged now because of these cases that are coming out of Texas and Oklahoma. And with that, we can move into some more federal cannabis legalization news. This one is also out of Congress, by the way, and it says Congress is Congressional Progressive Caucus urges Biden to expedite marijuana scheduling review and push for federal guidance. Again, looking for what are we supposed to do? All of our constituents want us to legalize this. Help us. We're just elected officials. We don't know what we're doing. We're just we're likable. We're the most votable person on the ballot. And that is the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And they're calling on President Joe Biden to direct federal agencies to expedite an active marijuana scheduling review and reinstate guidance to state cannabis programs from federal interference, aka this is tapping and reminiscent of the Cole memo from 2009. Something like that is going to be coming back out, and that's probably one of the things that Biden's review is going to result in is a new Ogden or Cole style memo, which were repealed in the Trump administration, despite that administration not really taking any action to do anything after they said that it no longer applied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Trump was just systematically trying to remove Obama and anything Obama signed, trying to remove him from history. That's what it seemed like to me. He was, whether it was a good or bad, he literally just went in systematically trying to remove everything from history. So yeah, if they bring it back, great. I don't think it matters though. Like I really don't. I maybe for like new states who are, worried about it, but like everyone else, man, is business as usual. That letter means nothing to us. Like Washington State, like if the feds try to come in Washington State, there's no way that people are going to comply with whatever the feds want to do. Like we need that tax revenue. Like people aren't going to just bow down to what.
All the congressional reps in your state too, and the senators, they would raise hell. And nobody's really trying to poke the bear too much when it comes to legalization, because first off, they don't know what they're doing, and so they're trying to have these bills like the Prepare Act or this Congressional Progressive Caucus requesting guidance from the administration. So they want to pass a law that puts it on the administration's back to say, how are we supposed to regulate this and change the priorities of the administration to, allow for legal sales, which is really silly. I mean, that's why Congress is there, to make these types of rules and policies. Mm-hmm. They really are, so like that they aren't doing their job and they're asking for another branch of the government to do their job. It's a little annoying. And I think that's what the more than the 100 members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus have said, in their request. They want Biden to direct the HHS and DOJ to expedite the review so that they can understand the timeline for any possible rescheduling or descheduling. But they have not given us anything. I mean, this was his executive action, not that long ago. I guess maybe 5 months ago, which is a blink of an eye in regulatory time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing how fast. I mean, how long it takes things to get done. You would think you could just overturn things, but there's only so many sessions, only so many bills, only so much time they're willing to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty funny.
All accurate. All of these are very, very accurate. And with that, we note that it is 20 past the hour. And so that, of course, means that it is 4:20 somewhere, especially if you are on the East Coast. And so I'd say smoke if you got them. Oh, man, I don't see a lighter. What a bummer that is. All right, we'll be back in about 11 seconds. I found that lighter, by the way.
It's amazing.
Good news, everybody. If you found your lighters, hit that thumbs up. We will not grow. Unfortunately, one of the problems with our channel is that it is not about what the stuff that we're doing over at the Collateral Base is about. The Collateral Base is a more varnished and washed down version of Cannabis Industry Lawyer, in the sense that I might actually be able to advertise for that. CannabisIndustryLawyer.com, where you guys can go and find all sorts of information about getting into the industry. You can't really advertise that. And I don't think we're going to be able to in the future either, even past legalization, because of what they call shaft restrictions. This happens to our company from time to time. Like a credit card processor might be like, no, you're not allowed to use that. Or if you're sending SMS or emails, they'll say, I'm sorry, you fall into these classifications. And SHAFT stands for sex, hate, alcohol, firearms, tobacco. And I think after legalization, it'll be SHAFT with SCHAFT. So, sex, cannabis, hate, alcohol, tobacco, or firearms. And so alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, they're all legal, but they can't really advertise or populate or grow communities on the internet as easily as if we were talking about, I don't know, AI algorithmic trading, for example.
Yeah. Well, we still get banned for trying to advertise on Facebook and Google, and we keep submitting to try to get them overturned. Like, what's wrong with AI trading? Everyone else is promoting it. What's wrong with us trying to promote it at Toro Alerts? And they're like, and they won't give us any answer. So it's just funny that no matter what you're trying to do, there's always some kind of a learning curve, I guess.
There is, and like for whatever reason, you're violating a policy. You don't know you're not trying to violate the policy. You just are, and you're like, well, I'm sorry about that. I mean, like, give me a chance. Thank you for telling me that I was breaking the rules, that I was not under any impression we had. But it is hard to start and run a business like that. I think this is one of the reasons why trade shows is a big aspect of the cannabis industry for marketing and for getting new clients and for getting startups into the space. We're going to be doing some Canacons in Albuquerque in a month, so stay tuned for those. It's
you have to tell me how that is, man, because Canacon started in Miggy and my backyard here in Seattle, and they haven't been around since 2019. They've only been hanging out in Oklahoma, and then trying to hit up those new emerging markets that have never heard of them or seen them. They were pretty synonymous with the pay-to-play system, especially on the speaker circuit, where like if you were a sponsor, you definitely were speaking. So you weren't really listening to industry experts. You were listening to friends and sponsors. And I made the decision in 2019 to go up to Vancouver for the Lift Expo. So I literally left the country rather than going 20 minutes to Canacon. Yeah,
and most of the trade shows are like that.
Yeah. Some of them, MJ Unpacked is really good. I think MJ BizCon has gotten better. They just sold. And then the Benzinga Capital Conference is pretty good. But I think those outside of those three, the rest of them are just hit and miss.
They are, and they tend to be better when it's licensing round time. And that's usually about it. That's the X factor. If you don't have a licensing round going on, they usually don't have that entrepreneurial and excitement that's going around with it. And so I could see Canacon like Oklahoma or maybe Detroit or Boston. Boston's getting a little bit full. I mean, it's too bad that most states, it's not most states, they made I'd say half of the states have these limited systems where you have this big round of licensing, there's a lot of excitement, and then all gone. And then other states, they have more of a muted, but accessible. And so there's a way for you to get a license. Maybe in New Jersey, we're about to talk about New Jersey. New Jersey has that. It's limited by the real estate. Michigan, same thing, limited by the real estate. I think that's how Colorado is, like in California, the dual licensing system, where you can get a license from the state if the community has one available for you. That's a different type of market, and I think it creates it's more competition. And so because it's more competition, there's, I think, less boof on the shelves. When you have limited market states, you're almost propping up the purse. You're preventing competition from coming in and forcing them to step up their game or go out of business. And it's easier to keep that non-fire on the shelves. But then you have states like California or Michigan or even Oklahoma, where there are so many growers, there's still a lot of crap on the shelves.
Yeah.
But there's some great stuff on the shelves too.
Yeah, that's a really difficult thing about Washington. I had this guy I know, Brian. He was at like LA Cannabis Times or something like that. I don't know. Some like California business. He ended up moving up here, just had a kid, and he's trying to figure out where to go. Like, is it this shop that doesn't have the good stuff? Is that one a tourist weed shop, whatever? And I'm like, no, man, there's 95% of this stuff here, even though we have 1,700 brands, most of it is trash. And you really got to just figure it out. I'd prefer to either just go to the legacy markets where, there's still some really good growers, or couple in Portland that I really like, but Washington it's just not worth it, man. There's people that are selling $200 ounces who were working in the construction industry not that long ago and still haven't quite figured out how to grow.
But and they got a license.
Yeah, man. I have no patience. I'm not going to wait around for you to figure it out. There's a lot of trash.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talent as well. I mean, they could have hired a grower. They could have paid a grower his percent, because they got that talent, and it's nice, but getting that level of talent, that's not something you can do in 2 years, maybe 20, if you are actively participating in the community and learning about how these cultivation methods work and staying on top of it. And like in commercial agriculture, weed that's grown commercially should be better than the stuff you make in your basement. It should.
Yeah, in theory. I think small batch whiskey, I mean, I don't drink, but small batch anything has its appeal. And I can tell you right now, man, 10 years, people have not figured out how to scale cannabis. So stop pretending, and then just let's go towards, the tomato growers. They are the quintessential example of small farmers who cannot scale tomatoes, and yet you still find it in huge stores like Kroger and Walgreens, or Walmart. So let's all kind of band together on a small level, because this main scale stuff is perfect for ingredients. Go make your brownies or your distillate, whatever kind of hot dog water you want to make. Go make that trash. But the rest of us want something that's worth consuming.
Right.
At least combusting. Make me something worth combusting, and grow some Blue Dream again.
Yeah, who won't be growing Blue Dream in New Jersey? Curaleaf. Curaleaf weed sales could be halted as NJ's largest operator after stunning vote by the state regulators. This was reported on April 15th. And this one's out of NJ.com. We should have used, never mind. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, the State Cannabis Regulatory Commission declined to renew the annual license for Curaleaf, the largest producer and seller of recreational cannabis in the state. A decision that will likely temporarily stall sales within the state's year-old legal market. And I can hear the lawsuit getting ready to be filed right now.
I bet you they file a lawsuit just to get the money, but they don't want to be in New Jersey anyways, because it's required to be unionized. And just like Starbucks fighting and blocking that union and getting busted for it, and all the while claiming, oh no, we didn't know. They know exactly what they're doing. And so
Yeah, they'll sue just to get some money, but they have no intention of being in a state that's required to or mandated to have unions.
Yeah. And they don't know what that means for people who shop or employees who work at Curaleaf's dispensaries in three cities: Belmar, Bordentown, and Edgewater Park. Officials at the commission, also known as the CRC, were not immediately reached for comment. Of course, it was a Friday, and they are humble civil servants. Hours after the vote, Curaleaf officials released a scathing statement calling the actions unprecedented and an outrageous act of political retaliation.
That's great.
Yep.
They were already going to leave. So what are they worried about?
I don't know, but they have a statement, which means in statements you just put out everything that you are expected to say, and then believe them sincerely behind the suit.
Yes.
Curaleaf remains open for business and will continue to work with the CRC board and its staff to ensure renewal of our adult use licenses, including by any legal means necessary, aka the lawsuits. The company said.
Yeah, I believe it 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then they like how they put out the statement that says we're committed to working with you, and then we'll sue you. But that's business. I mean, business is weed, and press releases and PR. That's a real thing in the industry.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
All right. Let's see what the next story on the agenda is. This one's good. I really saw this, and I wasn't sure on this one. I thought it was one of the bigger stories of the week until Trump said that genetically engineered cannabis causes gun violence or psychosis, which may lead to gun violence.
Before you get into that next story, Tom, the green crack does that to me. I don't know if you've got a particular strain or cultivar, but when I smoke green crack, it makes me edgy. Like, it actually makes me kind of like mad or angry or whatever. Like, I'm on edge, and like anything could trigger me and piss me off. So I don't know what's up with that particular cultivar, but maybe that's what Trump's talking about. Maybe he like ripped on some green crack. He got confused with his son, with Biden's son's product, and then it was like, yeah, maybe this is the problem with society.
Well, Cory Booker also says it's a dangerous drug. A story we'll be covering in a minute, by the way. But this one is how much people seem to be wanting and liking this new industry. This one's out of MJ Biz. Interesting, this came out the same week that they announced their new cannabis fact book, almost as if they took this fact from their new fact book to promote sales of their fact book. By the way, you should be buying MJ Biz's fact book. So the cannabis industry will add $100 billion to the U.S. economy in 2023, according to, go figure, the MJ Biz fact book. Yep. That includes 50... Let's see here. This was 2023 where it breaks the 100 bill. And so that is 33 billion in retail sales and approximately another 66 billion in additional economic impact, much of that being the real estate and the salaries and all the other stuff.
Well, last year we already hit 1/5 of that amongst the 15 markets in North America that headset tracks. So there's a few Canadian provinces as well as few markets, a dozen markets or whatever that headset tracks, and they got over 20 billion last year alone. That's not medical, and that's not all of the recreational states, and yet they're already at 1/5 of that. So it's a big step, and that's probably hyperbolic to some degree.
It's a prediction. It's an estimate of the total size of the business. It's not the supply chain revenue estimate.
Yeah, if you include ancillary products like vaporizers and then totally. Yeah, I think with lighters and like if you include all that stuff, easily 100 billion this year. Yeah.
Right. And that's what they mentioned, in this press release, and it is everything plant touching ancillary companies such as lighting suppliers, law firm, accounting, all sorts of stuff.
Dude,
like that.
To buy all that fertilizer for these grows is stupid. So just the inventory alone to keep the industry going is easily half that, I'm guessing, for medical and everywhere else. And then home grows and all that. A lot of these home growers are just throwing money away. They're not going to be able to break even. So they're making money on that for sure.
Cool. All right. I'm just trying. There she is. Before we get into the next story, I wanted to get into something that we do on the podcast at about half past the hour very often. It's called Name That Strain, and we have a new game where you can email Miggy the strains that you're legally cultivating over at 420binary@gmail.com. And then we will use those strains for Name That Strain and give you a shout out. And with that, let's play something. All right. And that's it. This one is not the best in the sense that it's not very well zoomed in. And as it is an overlay, I lack any ability to be able to edit the image. It's growing live. And so this is wet plants material, I guess, is how I would describe that. Looks pretty green and small. So this is weed from when you were a kid, or at least in college, like when you'd actually care. When was the last time you cared about how much weed you had left, Josh? How long has it been?
About 4 days. I hate going to the store, man, and we don't have delivery, so it's kind of annoying to go to. I don't know. It's stupid to say that, but outside of that, I haven't worried about access to cannabis in a long time, bro. Like, yeah, probably when I lived in Japan, and that's been a minute.
Yep,
they had great hash though.
Japan did?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't made in Japan.
No, I got it from an Israeli guy.
Right. It was Middle Eastern. Yes, and that's about the same for me. I can't remember, but then because we have legal home grow in Illinois for medical patients, it just goes bad. Like you grow it and you're like, that's right, I forgot about that stuff. It's fun. It's way better than when I was in college and I'm like, oh crap, I only have a gram left. And by that I would have like a third of a gram. I'd have like enough for a bowl and it would be shitty weed.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. Anyway, so that is the Name That Strain. With that, I'm going to just kind of, it's a lemon kush. And so unfortunately the overlay isn't all that great. So if you're taking the images, take it after it's been cured, of course, and then do your best photography skills with your phones. And then use some Canva or something and help us. And then email them on over to, let me put up Miggy's email address again. It is, where is it?
I was going to get Super Silver Haze for that one. It looks like a Super Silver Haze, really bright, light green, fluffy, airy.
Yep, that kind of. It is a lemon kush, and so those lemon kushes, they don't really have the green. They have the greens, but they don't have the purples. They hold a tight, dense bud structure, more typical of an indica than a sativa. Light green leaves, trichromes. So it's not the purple or any of those types of ones, but it'd probably have like a very lemon or lime scent, which is always nice. I mean, I have this one strain called Limelight that is now cured, and it's fantastic. It didn't yield enough. That's my problem with it. But
biggest problem I had with Super Silver Haze was how crazy it grows, because it just kept growing like a mushroom. You know, you wake up and it's another 1.5 feet and you got to scrog it again, and then it grows another 1.5 feet. You got to scrog it again, and then eventually I was on my hands and knees in this 10 by 20 space I was growing with 6 1,000 watt lights, and I'm like army crawling because the scrog is so big and thick and dense. I ended up taking those 15 plants and just harvesting them early because it was a monster, and I never grew that bitch again.
Yes, I tell you what. But that's one of the nice things about cultivating the plant. You get to have good time with it, and so if it is legal with where you can do it,
I miss those 85 degrees in my basement in the middle of winter. I do.
Well, I'm sure you don't miss the utility bill that you got with those.
No, that's why I stopped growing. $3 a gram when prices were plummeting. I was like, I'm out. I got to stop. That was
$3 a gram. Yeah,
that was my wholesale. Yeah,
cheaper. In certain states, of course, like it's really expensive for me to go buy an ounce, and I haven't quite calculated all my costs. I mean, some of the stuff, once it's sunk, you can the seeds or the clones. I mean, after you grow the plant once, that I could really calculate my water and my electrical, I guess, and my newts, but meh.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Get really gritty with it. Well, I'm getting it now for $60 after a 30% off. They have 30% deals on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays.
Damn.
So I just wait until I'm almost out, whatever, and then go to the store. And for this outdoor, organic, pesticide free, it's gonna have natural mold on it though, because it's outdoors. But it for $60, man, the value is so much better than the $200, $300, $400 ounces. That inevitably, like I'm convinced there's an inverse relationship between how good it looks and how harsh it smokes, because all of this stuff just is designed and built to look good, and they could care less how harsh it is. And I've smoked 155 strains for that Northwest Leaf Cup and realized they are all grossly misgrown, inappropriately grown, and it's way too harsh. So there's a lot of trash out there.
A lot of trash out there, everybody. Speaking of, our next story, it is out of Marijuana Moment. They're always on the spot. Cory Booker calls marijuana a dangerous drug and says he's frustrated with non-diverse industry. Yes.
Oh, that's what he's concerned about. Is not diverse enough. That's his.
He says it's frustrating to see marijuana legalization fall short of equity goals, and he says particularly due to ongoing federal prohibition, and that while he's pushing for reform, he's characterized cannabis as a dangerous drug that has not been studied enough. And this almost looks like they're kind of fabricating this one.
Dude, that's some of virtue signaling BS right there. How many people has he put in jail for cannabis? Give me a break.
Yeah. Well, he says, while cannabis legalization is something profoundly important to me, what is really frustrating is that I thought legalizing marijuana would have a democratizing force on our country, and it has not. And he's dissatisfied with the progress of expungements for people with prior cannabis convictions living in the states where the plant is now legal, and decried that the cannabis industry lacks critical diversity. And he says, in the business side, this is not fair and equal in terms of opportunity, as you would think. And some of that is because we failed to deschedule it. And so if you're a woman who gets a cannabis license, you can't get the capital necessary often to hold that license, to start a business, or to fund the business. And then he goes on to blame multi-state operators. So I have these MSOs funded by large hedge funds. Yes. And it goes on like that. It's one of those types of articles.
It's everybody's fault, but the government's fault when they had control of the Senate and the House and the presidency, and they could have done everything.
Large hedge funds or large wealthy individuals who are not diverse, by the way, who are going around buying up licenses from desperate people in communities where they thought they were going to go help to make sure that the very people who are disproportionately impacted by marijuana prohibition were now going to get an opportunity to help on the business side, but that has not happened. And he goes, marijuana business in the United States is overwhelmingly non-diverse, white male, while women and minorities make up a tiny fraction, not in any way proportionate to the numbers in America. So this is an issue I have been working on.
But let me push back on that narrative, because that's a BS narrative. I've smoked cannabis for over a quarter century, and I can tell you for fact, it's not directly proportional. Women do not use and smoke cannabis directly proportional to their population as a whole.
They are also not arrested. It's 85% of the arrests are male.
Aside from the arrest record, let's talk about consumption and use. When I was at a party in high school or college and there was a stoner chick, there was very rare that there was a stoner chick. For every 10 dudes, you might have a quarter of a female.
That may explain their arrest records.
Yeah, there's just not that many that use it. So they're asking for a disproportional amount of women to represent the industry, when the facts are they aren't consuming at the rate that men are. So really, it's not, they're talking about equality, but it's not equal if you're pushing that rate far more than who's actually consuming. If you want equal representation, it then wouldn't be equal, is what I'm trying to say. It's a false narrative.
Yeah.
There needs to be more women. Don't get me wrong. There needs to be more minorities and more women. But to say equal is, you've obviously never been to a cannabis party, because there's not the same amount of women as men that use cannabis, period.
I don't know. Like when they talk about social equity as like allowing somebody to access the license or not access the license, and that really is what it is. I mean, I live in a state, it's 100% social equity. You can't get a license unless you have that. You're exploiting the person who has it. You're gaming the system for it. And you're not getting at the core problem, really, which, like, why are the real estate values in those black and brown communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the drug war like half to like 60 cents on the dollar of what a standard, well, not a standard, the suburbs would be worth, for example? Why is that diminution of value so vast? And then why are we funding our schools on that basis. So now you've created a problem. You've done nothing to fix it. You've underfunded it. So you've perpetuated this problem. And then you're going to exploit people who live there by saying you're going to make them rich. Why didn't you use all these tax dollars to go fund those schools so that they could create people that are going to go out and get great jobs and go to college and really create wealth? I don't get it. But that's really what they've done. And so, like in Illinois right now, it's double social equity. Miggy and I applied because Miggy qualifies under the rules of what they call social equity now. It's like 1% of the population that might qualify, but why does the industry need to only be able to have a license if you're that person? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and he's able to do that even though he's not in the state, and so this seems like
it's a Dormant Commerce Clause compliant, but it's like super social equity. So you have to live in a particular area for a long time and be able to document that, and then you also have to have the arrest and be able to document that. So it's a very insular minority of the general population that can then access the license. It's almost as insular as the New York population that could access it. Or, I mean, like the New York population for growers was so insular, you had to have already been a hemp farmer. I mean, it's like there's like no path to even get a job in certain states. And then in other states, like Washington State, you guys have a limited license.
Yeah.
In Illinois, same thing. But in New Jersey, where Cory Booker's a senator, real estate is the limiting factor. And so, yes, suddenly it becomes a practical problem where you're trying to give these licenses to people that you say have been marginalized and that are impoverished. But there's only so many pieces of real estate. The prices of those pieces of real estate jump as soon as they figure out that they're there. And then you have the person that you've given the license to, their credit's not particularly good. Mm-hmm. And so they've never managed a cap table. They've never calculated the value of their shares ever. They've never had shares. And so you've thrown them to this corporate world wholly inadequately and prepared for it. Mm-hmm. And then you're surprised that they're being exploited.
Right. Yeah. So are they stacking other opportunities for selecting individuals? Because Miggy was also a military vet.
That one doesn't come into play in our state, but it depends. And so like disabled veteran status, for example, in New Jersey, that would be a priority too. And so you would be able to fly through the applicationing process at the state level within matters of months. Then you would hit the problem, which really becomes the capital raising and understanding how to do that in a sophisticated way to attract those investors, which is very difficult. But then also to find the real estate and have the community's blessing on it. And so like you can find the real estate and like, I love this. This is great. And it's like, you're going to have to kiss several rings to be able to open it there, because this area is run by these people and they have to say yes to you,
Yeah. Yes.
It's a tough one.
And then you got to just sue because you're not going to get it. And so you're just going to have to sue them to get it.
Well, okay. Now talk about the lack of access to justice there. And so now the only people that can actually access these licenses, they have to be able to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at lawyers to fight for it.
Yeah.
Who do you think's going to be left standing after you have all these requirements to get open?
The lawyers.
Yeah. The people that have created a hedge fund and put $1 billion into it to hire those lawyers and everybody else, Yeah. Let's see here. We're at 40. I'm going to say that was 40 when we did New Jersey. Our next story, and we do have one, by the way, not just that Cory Booker said that cannabis is a dangerous drug. We have the best city for cannabis in the United States. That one's so great, we should actually have a small little bumper for that. Let's do, this one is shit I wasn't expecting news. Ganjapreneur has named Portland as America's best city for cannabis. That is out of Ganjapreneur magazine on April 13th. A recent survey found that Portland is ranked the best city for U.S. cannabis shoppers due to its high number of dispensaries per capita, affordable prices, and selection of products.
Interesting. Yeah, it's only 3 hours away from where Miggy and I live. And it's the only place in the country, I believe, where you can still open a jar and smell it and see it. And so that's really interesting.
deli style in certain Michigan provisioning centers, which then became adult use operators, I believe are allowed to do that still, which is nice that they have deli style. There's maybe also some deli style in Oklahoma. Their medical market is fairly loosely regulated. You can't do it in Illinois, you can't do it in New Jersey, you can't do it in Missouri. The general rule, if it's new and it's regulated, is you can't do it. And I think it's terrible. It does a disservice to the plant because, strawberries, just like cannabis, are not consumer packaged goods. The vape pen, sure. The brownies, fine. But the actual plant itself, that's a plant.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, Portland's got a bunch down there, just like Oklahoma. There's a ton of people, half of what Oklahoma has, but I think Oregon still has over 3,500 licenses. So they have a ton of trash down there. Lots of things popping for pesticides and bad things, but you still have a lot of really good growers. Like the best grower I know of in all of North America consistently growing is TJ's Organics. The funkiest strains, the best consistent stuff comes out of TJ's out of Portland than anywhere else in North America out of a store.
Well, they also gave a ranking, the 10 best cities for cannabis in the United States and the 10 worst. Some of these are surprises, and some of these are like no-brainers. Here's some of the surprises. Buffalo, New York made the top 10. Did not know that. They just recently became legal. Same with Baltimore, Maryland. I'm not sure if I know Maryland's legal, but I don't know if it's become effective. I know their licensing is coming out. Is this about
the experience, like top 10 for experience, or maybe the top 10 for best strains? I can tell you from an experience standpoint, Seattle is way up there because it's overwhelming with how many products we have, but the end product is not great. And Las Vegas has some of the worst cannabis out there on the planet, but maybe some of the best experience with some of the stores down there.
How did they rank it? The survey, best use, and ranked for the worst, due in part by the affordable cannabis prices in the city. So that's one of it. And then I'm assuming that because they are using cities that have recently become legal, if are still in the process of it, like Baltimore, for example, and Buffalo, New York, which, I don't know if there's any legal, quote unquote, legal dispensaries in Buffalo, New York, despite being legal. But then here are the 5 worst, and this very few surprises. Birmingham, Alabama. You never want to say you were caught with a joint in Birmingham, Alabama. Memphis, Tennessee, Louisville, Kentucky, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been there. Also did not want to get caught with a joint there. Indianapolis, Indiana. It's a bad place if you like weed. Nashville, Charlotte, Houston, Atlanta, and San Antonio.
I would think with Milwaukee, isn't that a college town in the middle of nowhere? I mean, maybe they're just big drinkers.
It's not in the middle of nowhere. It's literally Wisconsin's largest city by population.
That doesn't mean anything to me. Wisconsin, I've never been there, and so
it's 400,000 people.
Yeah, that's nothing.
It's not that large, but it's the largest city in Wisconsin.
Yeah, relative to It's like saying Taos, New Mexico is like something big worth going to. Spoiler, it's not.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We now can save you from going to which place in New Mexico was that, Taos?
The whole state of New Mexico. When it's buried
in New Mexico in May.
Hey, look, it's pretty to look at, but there's no reason to go there. Sorry.
They have one of the most open industries right now. It's if you're trying to get into the industry, New Mexico is one of the best new markets because you can get a license.
Who are they going to sell it to? There's nobody.
You go to Las Cruces and then you sell it to people from Texas.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Yep. I guess. I don't know about this one. This one's a little nuts. I saw this one going around. I have not read it. This is where I wish that Miggy was here to be able to knock this one out. Teen Vogue. That's right. We're bringing you hard-hitting stories like Teen Vogue. Their parents were incarcerated for marijuana. Here's how they feel about legalization. There you go. Winslow, Canada, says her infant son has the same wide, infectious smile as her father. He got so goofy. Oh my gosh, they start with personalizing it. And the thing is, her father was taken away because he was incarcerated and given a life sentence for delivering $20 worth of marijuana.
That's crazy. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix documentary about, it's called White Boy. It's about White Boy Rick. Is that what his name is?
I've heard that name before, but I've never looked into it.
It's crazy. So as a teenager, he was asked by the CIA to be an informant into the cocaine cartels of Detroit, I believe. And so he was being used by the Detroit mayor who was on Beverly Hills Cop. He was that actor. That was a real dude. And he was corrupt, just like all of them. And this dude did, White Boy Rick did like 30 something years. And he's got 2 kids that he wasn't ever able to see at all. Like he was in crazy solitary, and all of it was because they didn't want him out to talk about how the CIA basically used him and then just abandoned him. And then he got caught and then basically threw him in prison for the rest of his life. So, I mean, it obviously affects a lot of people, whether your parents went in there or for whatever reason, the kids went in there. It's insane. To lock somebody up and then not be rehabilitated. I just had a 2-hour conversation about people coming in and out of prison, and the lack of rehabilitation is insane. It's a publicly traded prison system that's basically modern slavery, where the shares of these prisons are traded based on the heads of the individuals that are incarcerated. And it's guaranteed 100% for the facilities. So regardless of how many people are in prison, they get paid no matter what, incentivizing the police force to fill those prisons because they have to pay for it no matter what. It is a very, very disgusting, corrupt system that has nothing to do with rehabilitating individuals, which is why we need to look at all of it and go more towards mental health, because there's a couple of reasons: lack of opportunities, addiction levels, and mental health. And if we can solve all those by giving people more opportunities to work and giving them free health care, free mental health care, free addiction health care, then there's no reason to have prisons out there. And yet what we're going to end up doing is offering Oxycontin to 11-year-olds who have problems they don't need synthetic heroin for, just to get them addicted to the real heroin to put them in jail to fill those beds up. And that's the problem we don't need to perpetuate, and yet it's already happening.
Yeah, when you put a profit motive behind things and make it illegal, the profit motive doesn't go away. It just becomes a crime. You're not supposed to have legal things have a pecuniary interest in crimes happening. So when you have a private prison, I don't understand the policy objective there, because now you've basically said we always need crime. We're going to have this much crime, and we're going to beat on earnings next quarter because we're going to have more crime,
right?
Which is not a good policy goal. The policy goal should be the reduction of crime and the harm that it causes to our societies by using rehabilitory methods, not keeping somebody in a box and making sure they go nuts and then come back and come back and come back on the same bed so that your stock price goes up, but so that their life's better and so that their neighbor's life's better, and so nothing really gets worse. But that's not how we do things. And then it's this craziest thing. Like my girlfriend's dad, he got arrested for just too much weed. And that's not atypical, and so a lot of the people that I will talk to about whether or not there's social equity to get into the Illinois lottery or other lotteries or licenses that require social equity, we have to go, well, how much weed? Wait, or tell me about the conviction. Oh, you weren't convicted? I'm sorry, you don't count. Or there's these lines in the sand where you've created somebody who can access this right to now sell the product. And what was the policy goal there besides gamifying the system and controlling who gets it and making sure that they're weak? And by weak, I don't mean physically weak, but I mean able to be exploited weak, not well-educated weak, like that type. And then also in over their head, maybe just because they live there and they were arrested doesn't mean that they understand shrewd business tactics.
Right.
Yeah.
And you go to a place like Louisiana in the middle of nowhere, and there's people in there who shouldn't be in jail as long as they have been for crimes, and like White Boy Rick or not, the fact that he's been in jail longer than confessed murderers, the guy who committed 30 murders is out of prison, and he's in only because of the corruption. And that's kind of what I wanted to highlight, not whether or not we like White Boy Rick or not, but the fact that there is political corruption to keep people in prison from speaking the truth happens everywhere. nowhere, from the middle of nowhere in Louisiana all the way to Detroit. You know, it doesn't really matter.
And our country's not the worst of it. And like our country's actually kind of one of the better ones. Maybe some places in Europe are even better, like Scandinavian countries.
You're gonna have to elaborate on that because we have a quarter of the planet's population in prison.
Yeah, I know. And so like well, in the sense that in theory you have laws if you can pay to access them. We don't do a very good job of providing access to justice for people accused of crimes. We don't fund the public defender as much as we fund the people that are actually filing the lawsuits and bringing the action and prosecuting it. You know, the DA's office gets a lot more dollars than the public defender's office.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You're seeing people withholding information, and it's okay because politically people hate the previous president. What's happening in DC and in New York is not okay. What Kamala Harris did to make her record look good by withholding information to keep people of cannabis in jail longer is not okay. I don't care what aisle you're on. It's ridiculous to even have that argument. People should not be in jail, and politicians should be held accountable when they cheat, lie, and steal. There should, there's rules when you trade on the stock market. Insider trading, it's 3x of what you did. Now, when you're in a position,
treble damages.
When that chief, there was a police officer who was mailing drugs. Now, when she got busted, she should do 3 times the limit of what everybody else is because she's in a place where she knows better. She's a police officer.
Qualified immunity.
Whatever.
Talk about that for a double standard.
I want 3x the rules for all of these violators. I find it ridiculous and annoying.
Well,
to say the least.
Again, lawyers are very expensive. I know firsthand. I is one. And so as a result, you have made it in a system where nobody wants equal funding for the defense and the prosecution. That would get you accused of being soft on crime, and you have to run for election. Now, it doesn't make sense to me that why somebody having access to justice so that they can get a legitimate defense, a competent legal defense, especially in trumped up charges, that is important. And like I can see the public policy goals behind that. But then if you try to fund it, the political question says, well, why are we helping the criminals out? Yeah, I don't get it. But then the qualified immunity. And so like the person who's doing that from the law enforcement doesn't mind or does it with a little bit more impunity. And so thinking like they're not going to get caught, and if they are, they'll get qualified immunity, as opposed to the guy who's front running the stock market and manipulating trades who has to pay treble damages. When you have to pay treble damages, it means 3 times.
Nancy Pelosi's made $100 million while in office. She's been around since Kennedy's inauguration. And she says that insider trading is capitalism. But when we do it, she wants to have a congressional hearing on the AMC issue and all of that. So it's when she got her hair cut in California, rules for thee, not for me.
Yep, that's crazy. And so with that, we're going to turn this cavalcade to international news. Guess who's slow walking legalization in Europe? That's right, Germany. They have watered down their plan to legalize after talking with the rest of the European Union. So on Wednesday, Germany presented legislation that would allow cannabis possession and private cultivation, but not widespread commercial sale in shops for the time being. Yep. Which this kind of reminds me of Uruguay in the sense that the policy goal here is safe access to the product. And now they can have safe access to the product if you're allowed to cultivate for private personal consumption. That takes away the profit motive to a large extent, except for the local home grower, because people will be like, oh, you got some? And then it'll be like, I don't know about that. And then other stuff will happen thereafter. But it allows the supply to start getting in there, and then they can figure out how they want to regulate it for making money on it. If they want to regulate making money on it, the access, the safe access, looks like they're going to continue with that agenda, or that, that we want to fight the black market, they say.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Germany's Europe's biggest market, biggest economy. So whatever their rules are, the rest of Europe are going to follow, and Canada to a certain extent, because there's going to be exports from Canada into Germany. So when Canada already exported a couple of years ago to Germany, they had to send it back because they radiated it. So the U.S. does that with their foods. They'll throw through some radiation or whatever, radiate it.
There's some Reiki and some radiation.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But in Europe, they're like, we don't. That's not good. So they sent it back. Those rules that Germany's kind of creating is going to basically create a lot more demand for that. And so it doesn't really sound like there's going to be a whole lot of good production quality coming from that area.
Nice. Well, that's our show for the week, basically. And Josh, I wanted to thank you for filling in for Miggy. We hope that he's back next week when we have a whole new truckload of cannabis legalization news. I am planning on going to CannaCon in Albuquerque in about a month, by the way. So stay tuned for more on that. Josh, you said you're doing
Yeah, I'll be in Las Vegas on the 25th through the 28th. Going down there to visit Paxium. They've got a big old joint rolling machine, so I'll be down there for a few days. If you guys are down there, hit me up.
Awesome. See you guys next time.
With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to podconnects.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan from the Cannabis Connoisseur Podcast. If you're looking for ways to utilize cannabis to keep you healthy, strong, and sharp, come join us every Wednesday where we dive into the best ways to use cannabis to optimize your life. Topics include cannabis and athletics, cannabis for productivity, cannabis for anxiety, cannabis for a healthy immune system, and so much more. If you're a curious connoisseur, this show is for you. So please head over to our page and we're looking forward to seeing you this week. Bye.